this time, I says, you know, I felt something sting me on the face as I was standing down there. I said, just sting, and Walters looked at me and says, yes, says, you got blood on your cheek. He says, where were you standing? I says, well, down by the underpass. So we started walking down there, and when Walters got about, oh, I'd say 10 feet away, he says, look there on the curb, there was a very visible mark on the curb where a bullet had struck.
John F. Kennedy's assassination produced famous witnesses, famous films, and famous unanswered questions. But one man entered Dealey Plaza by accident and left with blood on his face. James Tague was not waiting for the president. He was a 27-year-old car salesman trying to reach a lunch date when traffic stopped beneath the Triple Underpass. He stepped from his car, heard 3 explosive sounds, and felt something sting his cheek. Minutes later, a deputy noticed the blood and found a fresh impact mark on a nearby curb. That tiny wound forced investigators to account for a bullet that had apparently missed the presidential limousine. Before we begin, tell us whether you think Tague's injury supports the official 3-shot account or exposes a hole in it. This is the story of the forgotten JFK witness hit by a bullet fragment in Dealey Plaza. A wrong turn into history.
And I was in this lane closest to us.
So right over here?
Right over there. That car just popped, those cars just came through. Now, if you come over to that first column between the streets, I was standing right out from it. And my car was still parked underneath the Triple Underpass. You turn around, the 6th floor window, last window down, you can't see it for the trees. The one down and the last one over is the 6th floor window.
James Tague had no plan to watch the presidential motorcade on November 22, 1963. He was driving downtown to collect his girlfriend, whom he later married, for lunch. Traffic had been halted along Commerce Street, leaving his car partly beneath the railroad bridge known as the Triple Underpass. With nowhere to go, Tague stepped outside and stood near a concrete bridge abutment. From there, he could see the presidential limousine moving west along Elm Street. He had been in position for only about a minute when the first sharp sound rolled through the plaza. Tague initially thought someone had set off an unusually loud firecracker. He turned away from the motorcade to look for the source. 2 more sounds followed. Only after the third did he fully understand that someone was firing a gun, and he ducked behind the abutment. When he looked out again, the Secret Service follow-up car was racing toward the underpass. A motorcycle officer drew his weapon and ran up the embankment. Spectators pointed in different directions, creating the confusion that would define nearly every witness account from that afternoon. Blood on his cheek.
Across the street over here, in time to get hear a man sobbing. His head exploded, and the motorcycle policeman said, whose head? He says, the president's. And this curb wasn't here, but I remember the deputy sheriff turning to the grass and kicking his toe as hard as he could, saying, damn, damn, damn. And he looked up at me and he says, you got blood on your face. And I reached up and I remembered it's something that stung me during the shooting.
Tague did not immediately realize he'd been injured. During the shots, he had felt a quick sting on his face, but the sensation seemed unimportant compared with the panic spreading across Dealey Plaza. A few minutes later, while speaking with officers and other witnesses, he mentioned the sting. The deputy looked at him and saw small drops of blood on his cheek. Tague reached up and confirmed he'd been cut. The men retraced his position and searched the nearby pavement. Roughly 12 to 15 feet from where Tague had stood, they noticed a fresh scar on the rounded top of the south curb of Main Street. Tague believed it looked like a bullet impact. A Dallas police radio report soon referred to a man possibly hit by a ricochet from the concrete. Whether the object that cut Tague was a tiny piece of bullet, a chip of curb, or a mixture of both, his wound connected a living witness to physical damage outside the limousine. The curb mark. The curb strike became an awkward piece of evidence. Investigators believed 3 shots had been fired, based partly on 3 empty cartridge cases found inside the Texas schoolbook depository. If 2 bullets caused the wounds to Kennedy and Governor John Connally, the remaining shot had to go somewhere. Tague told the Warren Commission that he probably felt the impact during the second shot because he believed he heard another shot afterward. He remained cautious, however, and admitted he could not identify the exact shot with certainty. FBI examination of the curb detected metal that was mainly lead with a trace of antimony. The absence of copper meant the mark was not made by a complete, undamaged military-style full metal jacketed bullet like the nearly intact projectile associated with Connally's stretcher. That left several possibilities. A missed bullet may have struck another object before a fragment hit the curb. Material from the bullet that shattered Kennedy's skull may have traveled toward the underpass. The mark could establish an impact, but it could not reveal a complete path. The shot that missed. Tague's injury mattered because the commission had to explain 3 shots within a very short sequence. One bullet was judged to have passed through Kennedy's neck and then wounded Connally. Another struck Kennedy in the head. The remaining shot probably missed the car. This calculation strengthened what became known as the single bullet theory. Without one projectile causing wounds to both Kennedy and Connally, more bullets would be required than the official firing timeline comfortably allowed. Tague did not create that theory, but his bleeding cheek made the missing shot harder to overlook. The commission considered whether the first, second, or third shot had missed. A miss on the first shot fits accounts from Connally and others who seemed to react only after hearing an earlier noise. A second shot miss fit the available gap between the 2 known hits and Tague's own memory. A third shot miss could explain debris near the underpass, but many witnesses remembered the fatal headshot as the final blast. The commission ultimately refused to assign the curb strike to a particular shot. It concluded only that one shot probably missed and that the curb damage could not settle which one. A witness who kept asking.
And at the time that you first heard the shots, what was your impression as to the origin of those shots?
My first impression was that they had come from the left of me,
Would you indicate on the picture where that would be?
up in this area here towards the hill.
Where in relation to that wooden fence?
Well, somewhere towards the wooden fence.
Mr. Tague, on the 22nd, when the shots were being fired, your first impression was that they came from the area near the wooden fence.
That's correct.
When Tague testified in July 1964, he also described his first impression that the sounds came from the area to his left toward the grassy plaza. Under questioning, he agreed that shots from the depository were consistent with what he had heard and acknowledged he saw no gunmen near the railroad tracks. He also criticized the response he witnessed. Tague recalled several minutes of confusion before officers moved decisively toward the depository. In his view, anyone leaving the building had been given valuable time to walk away. Over the following decades, Tague became increasingly doubtful of the official explanation. He gave interviews, returned to Dealey Plaza, and wrote about the assassination. His later theories went beyond what his original testimony could prove, but the injury itself was never imaginary. Tague's cut was superficial, especially beside the wounds suffered by Kennedy and Connally. Yet it preserved a stubborn fact. Gunfire, or its debris, reached a curb near the underpass and struck a bystander who had never intended to be there. One small drop of blood became part of the argument over every bullet fired in Dealey Plaza. Now it's time to hear from you. Do you think James Tague's injury fits the Warren Commission's 3-shot explanation, or does the uncertain curb strike leave the most important shot unaccounted for? Let us know in the comments section below.